was the one who decided that we had to get rid of one, so it worked out good. All right, we're going to call this meeting to order of Ventura County Board of Supervisors for the 18th of November, 2008. And Rosa, will you do the roll call, please?
Supervisor Long? Here. Supervisor Parks? Supervisor Bennett?
Here.
Supervisor Flynn? And Supervisor Foy?
Here. Okay, we're going to go to item number 3, receive and file for a study session simulated test of the county's continuation of operations plan. All right, sir.
Morning, Chair.
We'll call this regular meeting to order. And we're going to move on to item number 4, a moment of affirmation. And Scott Berman. Thank you, sir. You're up. This man with the sweets. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure. Well, good morning. I was hoping someone would speak for me, so I got to hear the proper salutation to my honored and respected supervisors.
Well, there it is right there. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, January 15th, next year, my wife and I will be celebrating 25 years as residents of Ventura County. We have 3 lovely daughters, ages 23, 20, and 16. And on behalf of myself, my wife, and my 3 daughters, we'd just like to say thank you. We'd like to say thank you for playing such a large role in providing the atmosphere, the infrastructure, and the amenities that has allowed an ordinary family to live extraordinary lives. And we truly do thank you for doing what you do. And though an ordinary family, I think our perspective is a little interesting and maybe a little unusual. I've owned homes in Oxnard, Ventura, Newbury Park. I've owned businesses in Oxnard, Oak Park, and Thousand Oaks. In fact, I believe I've owned homes and businesses in everyone's district except for Mr. Foy's. For some reason, he makes me nervous. Just kidding. My oldest daughter, she got a bachelor's degree at Wheaton College in Chicago, Illinois, after completing 2 years at Moore Park College. I'll never forget the day she called me from a department store in downtown Chicago. She said, "Dad, it's so cold outside, I can't breathe." She said, "Are you happy now?" And I knew what she meant, because she had heard over and over, "You will not find this weather anywhere." So she came back from college. She got married a few months later, and because she worked hard with her husband, they were frugal, they were able to buy a brand new house, a townhouse in Dos Vientos, just a couple miles from where we live. My second daughter got a bachelor's degree from Grove City College, just outside of Pittsburgh, after completing 2 years of college at Moore Park College. 2 years at Moore Park College. She completed her undergraduate studies and was accepted into veterinarian school. She's currently taking a year off to serve as a missionary in Mexico, working as a teacher for the School for the Deaf. Next year she plans to begin vet school, and she's already assured me she will return to Ventura County to practice. My third daughter is a junior at a local high school, and we're not sure where she will be attending college, but their criteria for her will be the same as for her other 2 sisters. Attend Moore Park College for a couple years, and then choose the best college you can get into in another state, as I believe this perspective is most important in choosing a home and just gives our family a great appreciation for what this county has to offer. So our thank you and our appreciation and our perspective may be a little unusual. It's not because I have had businesses that have been extremely successful or even real estate transactions that were overly lucrative. But we have truly loved and appreciated living in Ventura County. We have made great friends and have always had sensational neighbors. And most importantly, our daughters have thrived. And for this, we thank you. And we know that it comes with sacrifice on your parts, and it's not lost on my family. I also come and I bring greetings from another hero, or a hero, I believe, about to be made here in Ventura County. I know over the weekend I was depressed to read that the Bob and Mike Bryant had lost their match. They dropped from the #1 doubles team in the world to #2. And yet, as I continue to root for all the players in the county, the athletes, and other people with great accomplishments, I was reminded of Zach Sunderland. And he sends his greetings personally through his family to you today, to know that he is attempting to be the youngest person in the history of the world to circumnavigate the world. He's sailing by himself in a 35-foot sailboat, and just this past week, he officially made it halfway. Zach wrote this on his blog on November 10th. My monitor wind vane doesn't steer well in such light, and my tiller pilot burnt up. I've had to hand steer most of the past 24 hours. It was so calm last night that the stars were reflecting off of the water, and I couldn't tell where the water and sky met. I've developed a new method of celestial navigation. I tied the tiller to my foot as I lay in the cockpit trying to get some sleep and stay on course, correcting my steering by the position of the stars. I should be in Meridius tomorrow morning. Cheers, Zach. They say sailing is about 99% boredom and 1% sheer terror. I think Zach's had a lot more than the 1%, and I hope you'll check him out on his the website and blog, and he's certainly going to be a hometown hero. Lastly, wanted to share 2 scriptures from the Old Testament. These scriptures have always encouraged me, and I hope they will do the same for you. The first is Jeremiah 29:11. It says, "For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. They are plans for good and not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope." And secondly, 2 Chronicles 7:14. "If my people, who are called by my name, will humble themselves and pray, and seek my face, and turn from their wicked ways, I will hear from heaven, and will forgive their sin, and heal their land." I wanted to say thank you from myself, from my family. I have no complaints from the past. I have no worries or concerns for a great future here in Ventura County. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Ventura County is a wonderful place to live, and people like you make it great. Thank you very much, sir. Let's do our Pledge of Allegiance. Steve, oh, do we have a speaker on that? Do you have one there, Rosa?
Yes, it's not showing on the
Oh, if I push speakers, it might. Now it is showing. Thank you. Carol D. Williams.
The words of affirmation are Psalms 109. Almighty God, whom I praise, you are not silent, for wicked and treacherous mouths attack me. They speak against me with lying tongues. With hateful words they surround me, attacking me without cause. In return for my love they slander me, even though I prayed for them. They repay me evil for good, hatred for my love.
Okay. Do our Pledge of Allegiance. Steve, would you lead us, please?
Hand over heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
I've moved the minutes of Tuesday, May 13th.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Okay. That's it? Is it working? Okay. There you go. All right. Then we'll move on to our agenda review. CEO?
Yes, Chair Foy. On the agenda only, there was a revised page 4 for a moment of affirmation identifying Scott Berman from Calvary Chapel of Thousand Oaks as the affirmation speaker. Consent item 18, there's a revised Exhibit 4C on fees and payments, page 1. The second sentence is deleted in the paragraph under fees. I believe you received a corrected copy of that page. Item 20 has a 4/5 vote requirement, so that should be continued to the next meeting. Regular agenda item number 29, that has been requested to be continued to December 9th. And on item 31, you received a new letter that identifies a slightly different title, class title for the APCD, Deputy Air Pollution Control Officer.
Okay. So we, just revised. Great. Second that. That's right. Start voting. Thank you. Okay. And that passes. We will move on to our consent items, which would be now number 11 through 19 and number 21. Any questions on their consent? No? We'll move that. Second that. Okay. Okay, move on to our public comments, and we will see, we have a Carol Dean Williams? Yes, we do.
Good morning, Carol Dean Williams. I have here the article that the Star printed. I'd like to quote it. Because of that case and other laws and precedents, the county says it can't stop Williams from displaying his sign at the county government center, unquote. That's what the newspaper article said. He didn't say who he talked to, who said that, but here's the mug shots. Here's the mug shots of sheriff deputies doing just the opposite. Look at these mug shots. Look at that kisser on the undersheriff. Look at that kisser. That looked like he'd just been arrested. Look at him up there conspiring with Chairman Foy. Yep. Look at all these deputies. The county can't do what, Tony? Tony, you wrote the article. The county can't do what, Tony? How come I'm surrounded with all these sheriff deputies? Pictures just go on after on and on and on. I want to read Sheriff Report 08 003 0210 that they refused to give me a copy, but they have violated all of my rights from October 21st, 08 to 11/4/08. It's in this report. Write this report number down, Tony. 08 003 0210. It's all right there. Now, the Brown Act that governs this meeting says the people of this state do not yield their sovereignty to the agencies which serve them. The people in delegated authority do not give their public servants the right to decide what is good for the people to know. and what is not good for them to know. These public servants, or should I say corrupt public servants, have decided against the law. Well, but you know, there's always good news coming. Sheriff Corona's indicted. Well, is there any different in Sheriff Corona and our sheriff? Is there any different? It looks like a pattern of conduct. Just because he's sheriff, he says, I own this town. I own this county. That's what sheriffs do. Is there any difference in Sheriff Corona and Sheriff Brooks? Is there any difference? Well, I don't think so. But you know, the long arm of the law out of the Central District of California, called the U.S. Attorney's Office, he indicted him. I wonder what was the tipping point. I've been thinking about that. What is the tipping point of Corona being indicted and other sheriffs doing the same, or these public officials doing the same thing? The tipping point. Well, I have another couple items. I'll reserve my time for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's go on. I think that was our only speaker. We'll go on to our board comments. We have a few less board members.
Yes.
Supervisor Long.
Thank you, and I'll be happy to start with comments. I have a list to adjourn in memory of residents from the 3rd District, and I'd like to specifically call out one, Wally Beck. Although Mr. Beck no longer lives in the 3rd District, he was in our county for years, founded the Ventura County Business Incubator in 1994. I served on the Chamber of Commerce board with him, and he was a past president of the Chamber of Commerce and active in the Rotary Club. He was president of the local chapter of Experimental Aircraft Association in his new community and had a tragic accident, but is known by many still in this community, again through the Rotary and Chamber, and I personally served with him, so he will be missed, as will the rest on the list. Thank you. I'd like to, a couple of things as we enter the Thanksgiving season, to ask our county employees to be generous in both perhaps their time, talent, and treasure. One, we know that the homeless in our community are in throughout all of our county, have tough times always during holidays, but specifically tough times as the weather changes and we're confronted with delays in opening of our shelters due to state cutbacks or other funding issues, and so we know that the winter shelter is going to open on December 15th instead of the 1st. That puts additional strains on our community and really trying to help the homeless community, and I know our faith community is doing some very, I think, progressive work and seeing where they can assist with that, and certainly applaud them and encourage them to do so. And the other is that the rescue mission traditionally on Wednesday before Thanksgiving feeds the homeless, and always asks for volunteers to come and help with that, both in serving the food and in doing cleanup. And so if you're interested, to please contact the rescue mission in Oxnard. I intend to participate on that Wednesday, and it's always rewarding to do so. And I mentioned this last week, I'll mention it again, and that is the kickoff and the campaign that is underway to feed the hungry in our county through Food Share. Again, the goal is to raise over 250,000 pounds of food in November and December to ensure that every family can have food, those who need it most, to feed their children and to feed themselves, and to it's a crucial annual drive. We know that the cupboard is bare in many respects, and as a community, think about buying that one extra can of food when you get an opportunity to shop at the grocery store for your Thanksgiving holiday. And the last thing I'd like to, one more thing. We also have an open house I saw her earlier. We have an open house related to our mental health initiative, and it's under the Mental Health Services Act, and that open house will take place Friday in Ventura and Oxnard, and it's to learn about programs that have been launched under the Mental Health Services Act. And the open house will occur from 10 to 11:30 at our Ventura County Behavioral Health Center at 1911 Williams Drive. From noon to 1:30, the Adult Wellness Center in downtown Ventura will have an open house. So we're having these throughout the county. I think, one, I applaud the Behavioral Health Department for doing this, to reaching out to continue to build community and folks to understand what the challenges are for our mental health population, and to assist where they can, and to participate in drafting programs and policies that will help to benefit those in our community. And the last thing, I attended on Sunday a celebration of the 3rd annual program called Segway, Career Path Mentors. And I attended this because I've always been a supporter of Jerry Beckerman's and his innovative, creative thinking. And this program is a program that's now successfully underway in the Ventura Unified School District, and also now in Oxnard. And of course, he's looking to expand it wherever possible, but what it requires is business people and career professionals who are willing to give of their time 1 hour to be able to go into our high schools and talk to our high school students, particularly for those who aren't necessarily college bound, but even for those who are college bound, to talk about your career and how you may have aspired to where you are in your career, what practical applications and schooling might be of interest to the students you speak to. And I think it's a very engaging program, one that really just takes volunteers to make it happen. And Jerry and his board have done a very good job at doing that, and getting folks from the community committed to go to speak to our high school students and offer them firsthand practical experience and application of how they can put their schooling to work in a career path. So I thought it was a very enjoyable celebration, but excellent program. And I know Supervisor Bennett's very aware of it, and I know Marty is also very aware of it. So encourage those of you, or who may know others, to encourage participation and support for the program. And that wraps it. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Bennett?
Thank you, and my compliments to the CEO and her staff for this morning's exercise. I think that was very helpful for us, and I think it had the appropriate amount of seriousness and humor at the same time, and both are probably necessary for those kind of exercises and stuff. So appreciate it. The thing that's most important to me to get on the radar screen, particularly with the holiday season coming up, I know people are thinking about various holiday gifts that you may want to try to purchase for people. I think certainly as we examine the great American lifestyle that we have been fortunate enough to live here in America, it is obvious that it's not sustainable for the whole world to live at this level of consumption in terms of the impacts. And I know there are many Americans that are thinking about alternative kinds of things to do during the holidays instead of the purchase of another good, particularly another good that may just sit and not be used very much by the recipient. So I wanted to offer a suggestion. In my district, we have a great Boys and Girls Club that has pushed themselves to add the an Oakview Boys and Girls Club. So you already have the Ventura Boys and Girls Club pushed to the max, and they were willing to extend it in Oakview because there is a tremendous need in Oakview. And this is particularly for county employees that might be listening to this, that live in the Ojai Valley. I think we all know, but there are some unique challenges there, and there is no program better than this. The current Boys and Girls Club program goes from 1st grade to 5th grade, and they are turning people away. They're turning kids away because they don't have enough room. They will provide all the staffing, all of the operation cost, all of that, if we'll simply, as a community, step up and double their floor space. right, in terms of what they have. So it is it's a relatively small request, but I have committed to trying to find 200 people that would put $50 a year in for 3 years. And by doing that, they'll be able to double the number of kids that they have. They will, and they have a unique challenge in Oakview. I know the gang suppression unit has had some activity in Oakview. They have a unique challenge. It used to be that there's an elementary school in Oakview, Sunset School, designed kids grades 1 through 5, and then the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders went to De Anza Middle School. Well, they no longer go to De Anza Middle School. The Ventura Unified School District has brought them back. So you have 6th, 7th, and 8th graders at an elementary school not really designed for 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, and the Boys and Girls Club is the only thing they have, and they don't have room for those 6th and 7th graders. So if we can come up with 200 people that have put $50, commit to $50 a year for 3 years, they will double the space and take in all the 6th and 7th graders that show up. And again, those of you that have touched the Boys and Girls Club know nobody spends your money better than the Boys and Girls Club in terms of getting that done. So my hope is that a lot of people might think about giving that as a gift to somebody, which is for them to know that instead of spending the money on a particular gift, that you gave them, you became one of these 200 members in honor of whoever the recipient is. So wanted to get that out there. The other thing I wanted to do is with the fires that have been sweeping the county, sweeping Santa Barbara County and Los Angeles County, it reminds us of just how good of a policy we have in place here, very strongly supported and implemented by our fire department for the brush cutbacks. You just, we see far fewer structures that are impacted in Ventura County when these fires break out than any place else. So I want to use this as an opportunity to remind us of that, and certainly express my sympathy for the residents on both sides of us, north and south, that have lost their homes and been visited with the real tragedy of true firestorms that have swept through those places. And finally, I'd like to ask the board to adjourn in memory of the people on this list, and two that I would call out: a retired County of Ventura employee from the IT Services Department, Gary R. Stevens, and then a longtime Ojai Unified School District reading teacher, Marion Bush Greenfield. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. I meant to get on the board's radar just some update and again just for your understanding, the last Thursday the federal receiver's team, Mr. Kelso's team, was held a public dialogue in Camarillo, listening to the community to hear the community's concerns on the proposed prison hospital located on Wright Road at Beardsley and just in the unincorporated area. And that meeting was well attended, and it was reported in the paper, and I would say it was closer to 600 folks, but there was certainly both a well attendance and very vocal community that spoke out about various concerns of the siting of this prison hospital in our county. And I just raised that with you because on November 10th, the official CEQA process will get underway. They will be back in the county. The team from the federal receiver will be back in the county to start the notice of preparation to start the environmental process. And as we are required as a responder to that environmental process, our planning staff has already sent out a notice to the typical agencies who would review and comment on any environmental document that this will be coming their way. And the city of Camarillo is fully engaged and will be in the environmental process, and I have held meetings with them, and we will continue to work closely with the city of Camarillo also on that environmental review. And at some point, obviously the document will be out for comment and consideration, and pending what the impacts identified and the proposed resolution to those impacts, the city of Camarillo and this board may be asked to take further action regarding that environmental document. So just a heads up that as we would normally in anything proposed, that we, as a responding agency, have a responsibility under CEQA to respond to it, that we should be prepared to make sure that our county agencies do a very thorough analysis and response to the environmental document, and that the board is apprised of same. So put that on the radar. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd ask that the board adjourn in memory of the people on this list, too. One thing that did happen this last week was that some of you might have read that they're building homes for Habitat for Humanity, and some thieves went in and stole $10,000 worth of tools. It was terrible to see what's going on, all these people putting all this time and hundreds of volunteers doing all this work. But, there's always some good sides that come out of something, and it was great to see after this was out, you started to see a lot of people come out, and wanted to start helping. They brought tools, they donated a whole lot of different things. People were donating time to help finish laying floors. And then came this call from Farmers Insurance, who the employees kicked in $15,000 to buy tools. It was great to see that happen, and other volunteers, came to finish, and then now Farmers is offering a year's worth of insurance to those families who get it, because they wanted to get these people in before Thanksgiving. It was just great to see the community coming together in that after something like that happening. It's amazing what people will steal from. It just amazes me sometimes.
It's amazing the negative in that story.
Yeah.
It's amazing the positive.
And the positive, the people really, just goes, you need some of these kind of things to see that people really care. It's great to see that. So, anyway, it's good to see it. So, okay, let's move on to our general. I would talk about the budget, but I don't want to take anything away from Mr. Dursey today and our CEO about it. He let him have all that fun today. Yeah, right. Okay, let's move on to number 30, our auditor, Ms. Cohen.
Chair, four members of the board, this is a document you see every year, and we're asking you to receive the information on Exhibits 1, 2, and 3 at this time. And by December 9th, you complete your review and make the findings as appropriate given the government code sections requirements on developer fees.
Okay. Any questions on this, anybody? Motion? Okay. All right. Thank you. And then we'll move on to 31. The ordinance established air pollution control district management position. I don't see Mr. Oh, here she is. Okay. Great. Got a new face coming down.
Chairman Floyd, board members, Marty. Kelly Shirk with the CEO's office. I'm here to present a board letter to establish an at-will classification in the civil service ordinance. The classification title, I believe you have new copies of the board letter. The classification title got changed, and I don't have it with me.
It's the APCD Deputy Air Pollution Control Officer.
Thank you.
That's the
That's
title.
right. All right.
I'd be happy to
We
answer any
dealt with
questions
this.
about this process.
This is really an administrative role, and I've asked Mr. Nicole to look into how we can handle these things, because they share our classification system, but your board has no real authority over the position. Or I think we had one of these once before, and we wanted to look into it. So Mr. Nicole is looking into that. So hopefully these kinds of changes to our classification, we can figure out a way where it doesn't come back to this board.
Okay.
So.
I appreciate that.
Second.
Make a motion on the first read and then continue final adoption November 25th.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
The clerk needs to read that title only.
Oh, read it in title, okay.
An amendment to the Ventura County Ordinance Code, Division 1, Chapter 3, Article 4, Civil Service System.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, we'll move on to item number 32. And you gonna do this?
Yes, this is we're asking your board to approve the reappointment to the Assessment Appeals Board of Dave Eaton as a regular member, Vince Curtis as the alternate, and reappointment of Dave Eaton, Assessment Hearing Officer, and Jim Crow, Alternate Hearing Officer. We did go through a public process to secure additional candidates. The review process identified these people as probably the best for your board to reappoint. The review panel also identified that they felt that the process for future reviews should include additional information from each one of the candidates to better vet each candidate's experience. These people came out on top because they are the most experienced in that particular arena. So I believe staff has indicated in the board letter that we may have to, at some point in time, establish a second assessment appeals board depending on what activity occurs in that area. And for that process, we would do a little more intensive interview review process for selecting any other future assessment appeal board members.
Because we talked about, you're talking about an additional board?
Yes.
Because of the
Volume.
timeline, the volume is huge. I've heard some of that from some people. It's getting hard to get an appointment, yeah.
So at the point in the past when we have had a certain amount, the assessor has asked us to create a second assessment appeals board, but we'll check into that about the timing on that.
Okay. Sounds good. Do we have a motion? Okay. Thank you. Our correspondence policy?
Mr. Chair, I have a question on, that I'd like to ask the auditor perhaps to get back to us on some information on the correspondence agenda.
Sure.
Oh, I didn't vote. I'm sorry. Vote. There I am. Vote. And if I might proceed with that, the question, when we look at our redevelopment agencies, we've had this conversation over the years many times about what redevelopment does or does not do for the county and our fiscal challenges. So I'd like to ask the auditor perhaps at some time, when you can, to provide us the percent of share of these dollars that would be, quote, ours. Just to... Yeah, of the pass-through, increment net of pass-throughs.
It would be probably of the gross increment, what percentage of that is
That would give
come
us a
to
better
the
figure?
general fund
Okay.
or the dependent districts.
Just as an informational piece on dollars.
And
that-
we're supervisors referencing the chart on item 33.
Right. Just to, thank you, just to give us a good picture on where we stand on those redevelopment dollars.
Yeah.
Pass through our fingers.
It's amazing how much money is there.
Other than that, I'd move the correspondence agenda.
Okay.
Second.
All right. That is it. That is it for our regular agenda. Vote, John. And then we will wait, have a 4-minute break, and then we'll come back and do our 11:30 time certain.
Good, we need lunch.
4 minutes.
4 minutes. Okay, we're going to move to item number 22, our 11:30 time certain. Looks like we got our crew here, so that's great. Well, we are recognizing and honoring the recipients of the 2008 Ready Ventura County campaign and the award winners. But by joining, by joining a variety of national, state, and local organizations observing September as National Preparedness Month in the County of Ventura showed its commitment to educating its residents and improving operations during a disaster. I think we saw a little bit of even that this morning as part of what we're doing. During the month of September, residents received information on disaster preparedness through public service announcement on local radio stations, articles in the newspaper, materials on display in the Hall of Administration. The Ventura County Sheriff's OES also partnered with the Ventura County School District, hosted 4 disaster preparedness contests to educate Ventura County public school children to make a kit and to develop a plan and be informed about local hazards in our community. The County of Ventura employees also participated in voluntary American Red Cross training and completed a disaster preparedness survey to measure their level of personal preparedness and in the event of a disaster. Of those employees surveyed, 83% ranked themselves prepared The county exceeds the level of preparedness by roughly 10 to 28% when compared to other similar surveys conducted by other jurisdictions. That's great. I'm glad to see that we really are prepared. Both the school and employees campaigns have been acknowledged as a success stories in the National Preparedness Month 2008 Coalition member website. Several other successes have been accomplished throughout the year. Disaster information linked to the county website, which I think is important. Restructuring the Disaster Council, participating in the Golden Guardian. And the Ventura County Sheriff's Office of Emergency Service annually recognize individuals and organizations that have gone above and beyond in the field of emergency services throughout the year. And I think it's really important that we do. The county itself can be as prepared as possible, but if the citizens of this county are not prepared, it's too difficult for us to do what we need to do. So I appreciate all the hard work. And Laura, why don't you come up and...
Thank you, Chairman Foy, members of the board, Ms. Robinson. By virtue of your participation in this morning's exercise, we can demonstrate that everybody's doing their part to improve our level of response capabilities and recovery capabilities for the County of Ventura. Last year, the Sheriff's Office of Emergency Services began an awards program designed to recognize individuals and organizations who, over the previous year, made significant contributions to the county's emergency management program for the county as a whole. This year, our office launched the Ready Ventura County campaign in conjunction with September National Preparedness Month and the National Ready campaign. This campaign was developed under Supervisor Foy's direction and under Sheriff Craig Husband, who encouraged us to put these campaigns together. This year we are combining the two recognition programs into the awards program we are presenting here today. And before we announce the winners, I just want to recognize all members of the county's emergency management family and say thank you for your preparedness efforts this year and offer our special thanks. We want to thank all the cities of Ventura County who have done their parts to participate, Ventura County departments, all who have stepped up their efforts to get themselves involved and prepare their county employees and departments, all the special districts who are also members of our operational area and who've participated in response planning and recovery planning, all the supporting agencies we've been able to network with this year through our strategic planning process and through exercises and actual events, all of our volunteer organizations, and then most notably one of the accomplishments we made this year was the establishment of a new disaster council known as the Emergency Planning Council, and that was done through the help of steering committee members. And most of the members, I think, are here today, and I'd like to ask them to stand and be recognized. They worked with us over a 2-year process to reconfigure and reestablish the new council. And it was a hard effort, a difficult effort. We continue now with a new EPC in place next year. So it's, I want to just ask the members to stand. Commander Wade, Phil Raba, Bob Michaels, Cynthia Elliott, members of my office, Diane Dobbins, Barry Fisher, thank you very much for your help. And at this point, I'd like to invite Vanessa Hernandez to come up.
Good morning, Supervisors. Ms. Robinson. It's my pleasure to be here on behalf of the Congresswoman. This is our second year participating in these awards. Last year, it was the rains. This year, now we have fires. So every year there's always something, but it's always good to know that we have a team like Laura and our OES here in Ventura County who are always ready. They keep us up to date, they keep us posted. Anytime there's an event, they always include us. Anytime there's a training, they always include us. And so they have really reached out to the congressional office to make sure that we are a team. I never have to worry. Laura's always right there giving us those email updates. So if we ever need to take action, we're ready. So thank you. And we like to present certificates at that time to all those being recognized today because it's a small little gratitude of just to say thank you, but it's always nice when it's up on your wall, right? Thank you.
Okay, we're going to ask Vanessa if you could take stand over here. And Supervisor Foy, would you come and join us down here and help present the awards? And while he's coming down, certainly last but not least, I wanted to thank the board and the CEO for their tremendous efforts. You'll see as we present the awards a level of participation that you've demonstrated in helping this county improve its preparedness level. So thank you very much. We couldn't do it without your support. So the first awards is going to go to the Best Disaster Preparedness Advocate. And I'd like to invite Phil Robb up, please, to come forward. Phil. And husband, if you could join us up here also, please. Phil Raba has demonstrated over this past year and also in previous years a commitment and contribution to disaster preparedness in the Public Works and as the Public Works Health and Safety Coordinator and the Public Works EOC representative. He participated on the Disaster Council Strategic Planning and Steering Committees. He participated on the Ready Ventura County Employees Campaign Committee for National Preparedness Month. He helped coordinate the American Red Cross preparedness presentations for 296 Public Works employees in September, and that's 78% of the Public Works Department. He encouraged Public Works supervisors and employees to participate in a survey to measure the level of preparedness for county employees. 164 Public Works employees participated in the survey. That's 43% of the department, and 87% of them were rated as being prepared for disaster. So that's outstanding work. Thank you very much, Phil. Our next category is Best Emergency Preparedness Exercise, and I would like to invite Supervisor Bennett down to receive this award along with, do we have a representative from the City of Ojai here? Okay. If you wouldn't mind accepting your award and the City of Ojai's on their behalf. Okay. And this again is for their commitment and contribution to disaster preparedness by hosting the Ojai Valley OK Drill. The Ojai Valley OK Drill served as both a training exercise for CERT members and disaster public information campaign for residents. 91 CERT members participated in the drill out of 180 that have been trained in the Ojai Valley. 565 OK signs were counted by CERT members. As a result, they recruited additional residents to become new CERT members and CERT trained. We want to thank them for their great efforts toward putting this exercise together. We look forward to seeing what you're going to do next year. So thank you very much. The next award goes to the Best Supporting County Agency, and that is the Ventura County Public Health Department. And we'd like to invite Barry Fisher up to receive this award. Barry? We are recognizing Barry for his commitment and contribution to disaster preparedness response and recovery. Public Health is one of the few departments who readily opens and practices activation of their Department Operations Center. They provide representation at the Emergency Coordination Council meetings and Disaster Council meetings. They participated on the Disaster Council Strategic Planning and Steering Committee this year. And their most significant accomplishment was the implementation of 2 full-scale exercises in 2008, Operation Sunrise and the Mass Prophylaxis Exercise. Oh, that's a mouthful. Thank you very much. Our next award goes to Best Supporting Volunteer Program, and that goes to American Red Cross of Ventura County, and we'd like to invite Chris Johnson up to receive this award. Red Cross also provides representation in city and county EOCs for exercises and real-time events. Chris provides also participation in the Emergency Coordinators Council and Disaster Council meetings. He participated and helped lead the Disaster Council Strategic Planning and Steering Committees, where he served as chair of the steering committee. He participated on the Ready Ventura County Employee Campaign Committee for National Preparedness Month, provided disaster preparedness presentations to all county employees in September as part of National Preparedness Month, and partnered with county and schools on the Ready Ventura Schools Challenge and Contest Awards program. Thank you for all your support. We also created a category this year for best reverse 911 implementation. And that award goes to the city of Oxnard. We'd like to invite Commander Marty Myers up here, and I'm not sure who's with you. Please come on up. The City of Oxnard is being recognized for their commitment and contribution to public safety and awareness through the implementation of a reverse 911. They customized training materials provided by OES for their department. They trained and have multiple individuals within the department, including commanders and sergeants that are proficient in using the reverse 911 system. They've provided multiple workstations with appropriate software installed to access the system. Oxnard is the only city to utilize the mobilization feature of reverse 911 by adding EOC team members and other individuals with critical assignments. Key individuals include Commander Martin Meyer, Todd Burke, Steve Funk, and Daniel Whitner, as well as Emergency Services Coordinator Deborah Shane. Thank you very much for your good work. Okay, our last award goes to the Disaster Service Worker. It's the Disaster Service Worker Achievement Award. And unfortunately,
Dallas is ill.
Is ill and not here. So we're going to ask somebody from the CEO's office to accept that award on her behalf. Matt, please come down. Adele Tompkins has served as a county employee and disaster service worker for 20 years. She served in the EOC for the past several years during many flood and fire emergencies. She served on the Exercise Design Committee for Golden Guardian 08. She's represented the CEO many times at our Disaster Council meetings. She participated on the Disaster Council Strategic Planning and Steering Committee, and she also participated on the Ready Ventura County Campaign Committee for National Preparedness Month. I cannot take blame for why she's sick today, even though I know we worked her very hard, but it's no wonder she's retiring.
She lost her voice there.
Yeah, she lost her voice. So thank you very much, Matt, for your support and for Dell's contributions. And that concludes our award presentation. I wanted to again thank the board and thank members of the audience. All of you have served in some way to support our emergency management program, and let's keep up the good work for next year. We'd like to invite everybody to come out into the HOA lobby and enjoy some refreshments and continue this party outside. Thank you very much.
If I could mention something, it is always a challenge, this whole issue of disaster preparation in terms of getting it on the radar screen. I just want to compliment Laura and the Sheriff's Department and the team that put this together. This is an effective way to begin that process, and I think it can very easily ripple out, and you bring in a whole new wave of people next year. So my compliments. It's great.
I just had the opportunity this last year to work with some of you here, and I appreciate, Laura, what you've done in really making these things happen. And it is so critical to our county that we do whatever we can to get ourselves prepared and the citizens prepared. So thanks for all the hard work. Thanks to all of you very much.
Mr. Chair, appreciation for all of your work and to the honorees today. Thank you for making this work in your communities. Acknowledge Chief John Crombeck here from City of Oxnard here to appreciate his team's good work and appreciate that you're at the table always. Thank you.
Can we, what's that? We have number, we're going to do one item, then we'll go out and join you for your little reception. Okay, number 23.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. You'll save something for Murray.
Don't let him eat it.
I live in the city.
You better sit down then. On which one?
And thank you, Mr. Chair, and I would like to invite up to the podium there Murray Rosenbluth, our retiring city council member from the fine city of Port Hueneme. It is my pleasure to be able to present this to Murray and appreciate that he is here along with his wife, Marguerite, who is here to celebrate his retirement with him. 12 years of public service to the fine city of Port Hueneme. A little bit about Murray, if I might share, and I'll step down to present this. Murray was born in Philadelphia and has had significant accomplishments throughout his long and illustrious life. Major life accomplishments, he'll tell you, is receiving a Master of Science in Chemical Engineering from Drexel University in Philadelphia. And that he also served our country during the Cold War as an officer in the United States Army in Europe. He first came to Ventura County with his family in the 1970s when he was a project manager for engineering at Procter & Gamble Paper Products here in our county in Oxnard. Returned in 1980, managing a multi-million-dollar cogeneration, power generation expansion project. And as a result of Murray's leadership, projects were recognized as highly effective, financially sound, and environmentally responsible. One thing Murray is good at is fiscal and numbers and financially sound. That's his expertise. He was elected to the Port Hueneme City Council in 1996, re-elected in 2000 and 2004, served as mayor in 2000 and 2005, and while serving his community, Murray demonstrated a passion and spoke always of his commitment to social justice, economic justice, and environmental justice for all people. And he's worked on and served on countywide bodies of interest, too, that carry those same passions. He's recognized for his ability to successfully analyze complex problems, use common sense on solutions, and to turn problems into opportunities using, again, his wonderful background. I know Murray in serving on the Library Commission with them, and certainly in his role as council member of Port Hueneme and his strong leadership skills. And it comes from his belief in family and his belief in community. That his belief in family led him to honor his wife Adele, who he was married to for 48 years prior to her passing. They set up the Rosenbluth Family Homework Center at our wonderful Port Hueneme Library. And it is still a valued center, very much used and supported library in the Port Hueneme community. He also received the Port Hueneme Chamber of Commerce Citizen of the Year Award in 1998. And as I said, is a major contributor to the library and the children, and to have access to computers at the workplace in the library. He's also served as a Ventura County Library Commission Director, Port Hueneme Water Agency Alternate Director. So it is with great pleasure that I invited Council Member Rosenbluth to join us here so we could publicly thank him for his service to the residents of the fine city of Port Hueneme, but beyond that, to his service to our entire county in many respects, and appreciate that he's deserving of a wonderful retirement, is going to have, I think, lots of wonderful experiences ahead with he and Marguerite as they celebrate life, and they love to travel, and we'll miss him on these bodies he served on, but also in the fine city of Port Hueneme. He's not moving, and he'll have his fingers in where he thinks appropriate, I'm sure. But I'm going to step down, Murray, and will invite you to say a few words as I present this resolution. Thank you.
Supervisor Long, I'm overwhelmed. Thank you. That's it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh well. Do you want me to speak first or last?
Please. Yes.
No, go ahead.
You've seen these before.
Oh, that's pretty.
He's actually going to have a party I'm going to go to and present this to him too. But please share some wisdom with us, Murray.
Whoops. I was doing this, but it's
And we'll get pictures.
Okay. Chair Foy, Vice Chair Bennett, Supervisor Long, County Executive Officer Robinson. Good morning. It's an honor and a pleasure to be with you this morning. Unfortunately, my colleague on council, Tony Young, who's also scheduled to be here, is not able to join us today, and I'm sorry, I don't know the details, but I'm sure it's a very, very good reason. The first Ventura County supervisor that I met years ago was John Flynn, prior to my retirement as a worldwide engineering manager with the Procter & Gamble Company, and prior to running for city council. Later, I joined his efforts on a water committee during a major drought. Some of you may remember that in the early 1990s. Later, that led in time to the formation of the Port Hueneme Water Agency a joint powers agency providing state-of-the-art treatment of potable water for the people of Port Hueneme, the Channel Islands Beach Community Services District, and Navy Base Ventura County. I was a founding member of that JPA Board of Directors. I appeared before the Board of Supervisors in support of the living wage. Marty will remember that. And again, when you accepted the gift from my late wife Adele and me of a homework center at the Port Hueneme Library, and I've been a member of the Ventura County Library Commission Board of Directors since its inception. The library is my love. A viable public library is a hallmark of civilization. This, speaking of libraries, this library tie, originally belonged to retired Supervisor Frank Schillo, and he auctioned it off as part of a fundraiser for the Port Hueneme Library. And so I paid a small fortune for Frank's tie. And I've occasionally enjoyed sitting on your dais right there when I was called on as an alternate member board member of the Fox Canyon Groundwater Management Agency. I like the view from up there. Now at age 77, I am leaving elected office but not giving up. There are several projects in the nonprofit sector that I will be working on. These projects are consistent with my passion for social justice, economic justice, and environmental justice for all people. Therefore, I will be speaking to you from time to time as an advocate for these projects. And consistent with that, Supervisor Bennett, you found one of your 200 people. I pledge to join you. Email me where I'm supposed to send my check. I thank you again for recognizing and honoring my service and the service of my colleague, Tony Young.
Thank you.
Now let's get the picture.
And then I'd like to invite Marguerite. Please come up.
Ready? 1, 2, 3.
So we can include Marguerite in the picture.
Okay, ready? 1, 2, and 3.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Bring it.
Yes, I will. I'll bring it Saturday.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Murray.
We have a card on this. Trying to let.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I must have misread it. I thought it was honoring Mayor Tony Young on the agenda. The reason I wanted to speak is I was invited by citizens in Port Hueneme when Tony Young first ran for office. I wish she would have showed up today. She was a blonde, a fresh face, a glamour girl. I didn't see her here today. She wasn't here?
She couldn't make it.
Pardon?
She couldn't make it.
Oh,
sir.
she couldn't make it. Okay. All right. Well, I was confused there about Tony Young and why she's on the agenda. Shoot, I was wanting to speak in her presence. I didn't want to.
You can go to the city council meeting when they do her last meeting.
She's not retiring?
She is retiring. But
Okay. She is retiring.
Yeah, her last meeting will be in a week or two.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, thank you.
And Mr. Chair, just for the public record, I wanted to say that I would hope that we will accept the resolution also in honor of Tony Young, and I'll make sure we carry it forward to her in her chambers. And thank you again, Council Member Rosenbluth. Thank you, sir.
Go out to the break that's out front, and then we'll go into closed session for a while, and then we'll be back out here around 1 o'clock. Thank you. We'll call this meeting back to order. We'll go with our 1 o'clock time certain. Supervisor Long?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. As you see in my board letter, it's a recommendation to appoint Stanley C. Mantooth to serve on the First Five Commission, and I invited our new superintendent of public education to be in the boardroom with us and invite him up to the podium, to the dais to speak, Mr. Mantooth, as I just cover a couple things and why he is a perfect fit to serve on the First Five Commission. Certainly having worked with the Ventura County Superintendent of Schools for years, he was appointed September 1st, 2008 to the position, and as you know, served with Chuck Weiss when Chuck served as our Superintendent of Schools for years. Mr. Mantooth has similar philosophy and support, certainly speaks to being a strong spokesperson and advocate for all of our Ventura County students and schools, advocating for the expansion of preschool programs throughout our county, and is excited about joining the First Five Commission. Currently does also serve on the Community Commission of Ventura County. So that will be my motion to appoint him, but I did invite him in so you all would get the chance, if you hadn't already, to meet Mr. Mantooth.
Thank you very much, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Ms. Robinson. I'd like to thank you in advance for your consideration of my candidacy and appointment to the board, and particularly thanks to Supervisor Long for championing my interest. There's a lot of congruency between First Five and, of course, our office and the school districts in Ventura County. Our task is to develop the raw material that are going to make the children citizens of the world. The world's an uncertain place, and as adults, we kind of take our chances with that. But it's very unfortunate when bad things happen to kids. And we want to do all that we can to make sure that doesn't happen, or to put the odds in their favor. And I think by working on a commission such as First Five, through my office and representing the school districts in the county and the children of Ventura County, that I think we can do some good. And it's a pleasure meeting you all.
Thank you for coming. Appreciate that. Yes, sir.
If I could, as a chair of First Five, I'd like to welcome you to First Five. I've only had the pleasure to talk to you one time, and so I'm looking forward to getting to know you, but the things I've heard about you since you've been elected have certainly been very positive, so I look forward to your taking those good skills and bringing them to the First Five Commission, because there's a lot of good work going on at both your organization and with First Five. So,
thank you, Mr. Bennett. It's early days yet, but I think, with the legacy I've been provided, we're going to keep the continuity going.
Thank you for coming in, too, Mr. Mantooth. Thank you.
Okay.
Look forward to working with you.
We have a
And
motion?
that is my motion.
second. Second took off before I got to hit the second, so
Oh, did we get a second?
it went right to voting.
Yep.
There you go.
There you go. And there we have it. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thanks for serving. Like everything else you've got going, you had to get back to work. All right, we'll move on to 27. We brought this back.
Good afternoon, Chairman Foy, members of the board, Ms. Robinson. We're back again with the agreement with Vault for agricultural mitigation.
Doesn't have his costume on.
On Lewis Road. And just as by way of an introduction, when your board approved the Lewis Road EIR, you did make a finding of unavoidable significant adverse impact and approved a statement of overriding consideration. However, you did assign a mitigation condition which had several options. We've tried to lay those out in the board letter. We looked initially at purchasing or reserving agricultural rights for the property that the university system owned on Lewis Road. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. And we looked at other options. Stockpiling this soil was unacceptable because we needed it for the project. And so we looked at paying an agricultural mitigation fee in conjunction with an organization, in this case Vault, which is dedicated toward reserving agricultural rights. In consideration of Supervisor Bennett's concerns, we did try to mitigate or put more teeth or more enforceability into the agreement. We understand that we don't always get everything 100% right the first time, so we're still willing to make changes as staff should there be further changes your board would request. With that, I don't have any other thing to add to this. Excuse me, I do. Mr. Rose is here, president of current president of Vault, and with a RTE. And so if there are any questions of them, I think they'd be more than willing to stand up. And I think Mr. Rose indicated you did want to say something about the Vault.
Mr. Chairman, Board, I'm Larry Rose, Ventura Agricultural Land Trust and other things. This is very timely because the Vault backburnered our operations generally in 2004 after the failure of Measure A without a demonstration of funding from our voters. We stopped promoting agricultural conservation easements in the county as a tool. What has come up is Rick Breckennier and Craig Underwood would like to put a conservation easement to permanently conserve their 140 acres of agricultural land out in Tierra Rajada. I told them I didn't really want to restart Vault for one prize conservation easement, but it aptly fits out there. It's a city separator, as we all well know, for 4 cities. It's up adjacent to the city of Thousand Oaks. It has a lot of partners on it, National Park Service. The Nature Conservancy is staffing and moving the conservation easement along. We have letters of intent signed by both parties, and appraisals finished. What we didn't have is local funding match, and this will do it. It's a sizable conservation easement purchase that we, with that tool, the landowners keep the underlying title of the property, but relinquish any potential future development on that other than agricultural operations. But Nature Conservancy is interested because it's a vital wildlife corridor between the coastal mountains and the interior mountains. Even Caltrans maintains a video monitored corridor under Highway 23, and Coastal Conservancy, the Nature Conservancy, the California Farmland Protection Program are all excited to participate in this, and this mitigation money will help us do that. Vault is currently being reorganized with Marty Melvin as our executive director, and will be run out of the RCD office in Sonos. And our board meetings will be at that location. Any questions, I'd be happy to answer. Craig Underwood and Rick are not concerned that their confidentiality be protected at this point. They would like to really see this happen, and we really want to make sure it does.
Yes.
Would that particular property take all of the dollars that are proposed here?
This is a very small ante to it. It's actually going to be in excess of $4 million, the purchase of the conservation easement.
So this is just the start.
And this will be the first farmland conservation easement in Ventura County.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
In preparation for this, I read something. You think it's going to be 4 years or so to put it all together? Is that right? Before it's finalized?
When I was asked about a timeline for use of this money, it's often difficult to raise money from many different agencies within a short 6-month to 1 year period, and having it on where it doesn't need to be re-upped every year, for instance, it does give us the flexibility of bringing all this funding together, because no one agency is going to be able to do this. It's going to be a combination of 3 or 4.
Great. Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah. Let me ask, when this conservation easement's put together, since it can't be developed, the value of that property drops, right? And that's what you're paying for basically in this?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear
the value of that property reduces? Are we going to?
Indeed. It's a benefit to the owners and their estate planning to sell a conservation easement value, because it does remove that potential from the property and lower their estate liabilities.
Does our assessor reassess that property then?
It is still under LCA Williamson Act contracts, which pretty much lowers it to the minimal assessment anyway. So though it may be reassessed, it would probably end up on this at the same tax roll anyway.
Great, okay. All right, any more questions on this? We all?
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Just a quick question on the 370,000. I need a fund budget unit line item from which the payment is being made.
From which the payment's being made, or from which?
From
I assume staff can help with that. This is a road fund of some sort, right? Okay, great. Well, I want to really compliment Larry. Certainly worked with Larry over the years, worked hard on the 2004 open space campaign, and glad that Vault is out there and glad that Vault is reorganizing. One, two, it's great to sort of out there publicly now about that key property that is really an important separator between those three cities, and that's exactly what would be good for Ventura County, lots of places, and that's what we were trying to really push with 2004, which is to buy the development rights, not have all the confusion of owning the land and all of that. The property owner still owns the land, but you have this confidence that in perpetuity that place would be in open space. So I really welcome this and look forward to this going forward. I was having a conversation just as you were starting the meeting there. Last week after this, I sent an email out and talked about some of the things that I'd like to see in this modified agreement. And, unfortunately, it didn't get on Butch's radar screen in terms of the issue of the escrow. So I've talked to Noel about it, and one of the things I expressed in my email was the value of having it in an escrow, so that they have full access to it as soon as they put this thing together. But it strikes me that it's just more appropriate, given there's lots of funding sources that still have to come together. It's going to be many years for that to happen. That we ought to put this in an escrow account rather than the way it's lined out here at this point in time. I talked to Noel about this. I'd prefer to not have this have to come back to the board again, and he said that we could simply modify this to direct our staff to work out the terms of the escrow agreement and sign that, and have that and deposit those funds into an escrow. So could you just verify, confirm, whatever, in terms of how you think that could happen?
Certainly. Excuse me. The board could authorize the Public Works Director to enter into an agreement in the general form as submitted to the board today, with the addition of an escrow agreement in which the funds would be held until the transaction which Mr. Rose described is prepared to close, and at that point, through joint instructions from the Public Works Agency Director and the representative of Vault, the escrow would be instructed to turn the funds over to Vault.
Okay. I think that'd be the most prudent way for us to go with this being Vault's first, this is Vault's first endeavor, and there is already. Okay, yeah, this already has it. I think it would be prudent from that standpoint with this being Vault's first endeavor, and just who knows what's going to happen with the people and all of that stuff in terms of the length of time. Also, I think it makes it easy as we come, if we came up on the 5-year and they need more time to simply extend the time, the board, that would all be, I think, easier to do sort of in an escrow setup like that. So with that, he's trying to get your attention. He wants to...
Yes, you need to speak.
Sure.
Marty Melvin, I'm the district manager of the RCD,
Yes.
Chairman and board members. One of the challenges that we're having in putting this together is that, for example, the money coming from the Conservation Department doesn't allow for some of the overhead that the agencies spend to develop these things. And I would just like to say that whether it's an escrow account or a direct to a 501c3, which is what Vault is, as opposed to a nonprofit special district, which the RCD is, we're working together on this, that the money is not so restricted to that specific to the transaction, but that some of that funds is going to help us actually go out, because we're spending time raising money and writing grants and doing these things to actually make this happen, and this will be the first one. it's also a part of an overall project that several of the stakeholders, including the Nature Conservancy, the RCD, the Farm Bureau, and VCALG and some others are doing in the county to talk about natural floodplain management. Critical element to that, particularly on the Santa Clara River, would be the capacity to be able to buy ag easements and to work with the landowners in that capacity. So this is kind of an important, almost tipping point for us in the county in terms of conserving agricultural land and or open space. And agricultural land, of course, is an excellent vehicle to do that. So I just wanted to bring that up. If I could, please. Thank you.
I think that I think that highlights sort of the issue here. This is money that's being put aside specifically for mitigation in terms of ag land being lost, and I think that our intention here is to have it be to actually purchase ag land, and you want to make sure that that's what the funds are used for, and they don't get used in terms of other administrative costs, et cetera, and that's what could happen. That's a potential concern, so I think that that's exactly why we should have this money go into an escrow account in this situation. An organization ought to be able to have a capacity. Our organization ought to be able to have the capacity to be able to do this, and this be a fund of money that is specifically dedicated for the mitigation. So that's my.
You got a question? Any comments on that? It seems to me that you were trying to say that some of this money we could use for some of this search for some other money.
Well, the challenge that a lot of small agencies are having, example Prop 50, let's just say the $25 million grant that we got from the state, RCD is participating in that in a demonstration project. The state and some of the bond issues don't allow for overhead. Well, a lot of the NGOs that wanted to participate in these projects and small agencies like the RCD, most of our funding comes from grants. We have very little, tax base. And so in this case, where we have an excellent opportunity to make something happen, we have two well-regarded families who have been in the area a long time who are really create a tipping point for this concept. If we don't have the capacity to go out and actually raise the money to continue to do this, because with all the time that Larry and I and my staff and other people are spending TNC on this is being spent with what little general monies that most of these agencies have. And so all I would say is that in order to make it happen, if that's really a goal of this board, and at least that's what I've understood it to be, having the money go to like Vault and some of that money being used to actually finalize the project rather than just a straight outright purchase is going to make this thing go ahead faster. The challenge always is that, particularly with the state, is that all the money that we spend to get state money, small agencies like the RCD and NGOs, TNC, some of the other agencies that have tried to participate, they have no capacity to do that, and we can't build the state after the fact. And so we have to at some point recognize that if we really want these kinds of things to go forward, we have to give the smaller agencies and NGOs and others the capacity to actually make it happen, because the funds are there. That's not really an issue. The Department of Conservation in Prop 84 has set aside $400 million for conservation easement, ag conservation easements and conservation easements. So the money's there, and we have an excellent project. They like it. They've seen it. They've actually been down here, and we're in the initial discussions. And so, but again, without the capacity to spend the time, I don't know if you've ever filled out a state grant or a federal grant. Trust me, it's a nightmare. And without the time to be able to do that, it won't happen. So that would be my only, and again, I think that, obviously it has to be judicious and all of that. I said earlier that, with a 501c3, if this board directs a gift to the 501c3 and specifically directs it to a thing, they cannot spend it on anything other than that. That's the law. So that's as good as an escrow account in the sense of determining where the money goes. If there's a protection thing, that that's another issue. But
I'm specifically hearing you talking about, you've got overhead costs, you have all of that stuff. And I guess I asked this question, and this is the protection that I'm trying to look for the taxpayers with this as a mitigation, is that we get 3 or 4 years down the road, and for some reason, because of this economic crisis that we're in, et cetera, the funds don't come available. And that's not beyond the realm of possibility. You're talking about $4 million, and this is just the very beginning. And you've used that money for overhead and for other things, and not specifically for the land acquisition. you don't have an ability to return that money. And when you say, you know, it's as good as an escrow account, I mean, it's what are we going to do as the Board of Supervisors if we get down the road and $100,000 of this money has been used for overhead and those kind of things?
We're not talking about overheads, Supervisor Bennett. We're just talking about the ability to go out and get additional monies. It's not overhead for the organization.
Well, I mean, if it's specific, and I would hope that if we're gonna do this and set up, and we're gonna do mitigation, we're gonna do it with an organization that has enough capacity that they're not completely reliant upon this money for that capacity. We want to do it with an organization that has enough capacity to be able to pull that off.
Are there the challenge is that there are not organizations that have that capacity. I mean, you can't name one in this county that has capacity to do what we're doing. If it wasn't for the RCD and TNC and the willingness of others, and the fact that the Conservation Department's come down here and seen this, it's not going to happen. And we saw that with Prop 50. I could line up 15 NGOs that wanted to participate in that. They cannot do it. We had to go out and actually we were going to pull out of the Prop 50. Because I told them, I said, we can't do this. I don't have $50,000 a month of cash flow to cover. The state can take 9 months to pay. And my board said, okay, we're not going to do that, because if we pulled out, the whole $25 million would have gone away. But I was ready to do it. I didn't care, because I don't have the capacity. We had to go out and get a credit line so that we can pay. We're paying interest on that money, and that we don't have any source of paying that back. The state won't let us reimburse them for the interest. That's coming out of our pocket. All that to say, there aren't organizations that have the capacity to put these things together. And you're talking about viability. The RCD has been here since 1939. It's one of the oldest conservation districts in the United States. I don't think that there's any chance it's going to go away. But without the capacity to actually pursue these things that we're trying to do in terms of conservation and ag preservation and those things, there has to be some funds that help us do that. And again, this is great, but it's just a start.
Well, it certainly hasn't been made clear to us in the letters that this money is going to be used for anything other than the actual acquisition of the property.
Well, that's fine. That's fine.
And if the funds are going to be used to try to acquire other funds, my question would be, where would the money come to pay us back if, in an attempt to try acquire the other funds, took X amount of money, and then you didn't acquire the other funds? How does the taxpayer? We're not going to go back to Vault and somehow say Vault owes us $50,000 that you used to acquire.
I think that's the big concern, is that I understand where you're trying to come from. I got to go out and write a whole bunch of grants. I got to do this work, and it takes overhead to do that. Only focused on what you're talking about, Vault. But at the end, 5 years from now, we look at this and say, well, it was a difficult time. We couldn't find any, and we've used $300,000, $370,000. What we're saying, that's a valuable dollars.
It is
valuable dollars. The road, I mean, Bush could use that in a whole lot of places right now.
Right.
And that's our big concern, is so we were just trying to say, if for some reason something doesn't work out, in the escrow, it'd be easier to take it back. Or you come back and say, we just can't find that money.
Well, I guess my thinking was, obviously, if they designated the funds to a 501c3, which I've done this my whole life, we couldn't spend it for anything other than
but we probably couldn't get it back, though.
But we wouldn't spend it. It would be all right. It's true.
Yeah.
But the interest, that's $15,000, $16,000, $17,000 a year. That's quite a bit of grant writing. You see, that's a benefit to the entity.
That'd be a nice thing that staff could write into the escrow agreement, that the interest while this thing is in there could also.
That may help. I guess that's that base dollars that we just don't know where we're going to be at, and to give it, and then hopefully we're going to get something out of it. We want to make it work. Yes, sir.
The agreement that we have signed with the Department of Transportation is restricted to land purchase or conservation easement purchase. That is agreement that has been signed.
Well, and I think this just highlights it. And yet, at the same time, your executive director is saying he'd like to use some of it to acquire grants and those grants aren't. I mean, applying for a grant, and whatever time and energy it takes to apply for the grant, that's not acquiring the actual easement. So there's a
the principal has to be used for acquisition.
Yeah, that's all.
So I mean, that'd have been nice to know. I mean, were you planning on using the interest for your other expenses and the principal being reserved? That's a piece of clarity that's only showing up at this point in time.
Yeah, it was just a suggestion that I made.
But if that helps, that over the next 2 years, there's $30,000 or $40,000 that helps you write grants to acquire the other $4 million. That's a great opportunity, but I think the 370 would want to use, or whatever that was, to acquire the land, which I don't know if that can be done, or...
We can do an escrow agreement, and I can't speak for Vault, but I think we can work out the details that you've mentioned if you give us the authority to do so.
Well, yeah, my motion would, as I came in here, my motion would be to basically do what Noel said, which is take these requirements, which has the 5-year time limit and all those kind of things in there, but to direct staff to work out an escrow agreement. And I was more comfortable just trusting that's the case. Now I'd like to say I'd like to see the escrow agreement, but I don't need it to come back here. But I would certainly like to understand the terms of that as it comes forward.
Yes.
So are you saying you would agree with protecting the principal and then interest could be flexible for admin use of securing additional grants to match?
If staff works that out escrow-wise, and I certainly can be comfortable with that.
Okay.
I think to make sure, though, Butch, that it really is to do exactly what Marty had said, is that we're just going to go after additional funds for exactly that. When we
That's
talk
what
about,
they're trying to do.
Yeah, we talk about overhead, but it's only focused on
we can limit
that.
as we have limited the use of the principal, and which Walt has agreed to. The principal can only be used for agricultural purposes. We can also limit the use of the interest to purposes related to that.
That's fine. I'm comfortable with that. You have any problem with that? No, it doesn't affect you?
I'll just need to have the detail on where it's being paid out of and who do I make the check to.
We'll give you that, ma'am.
And just obviously it needs to be in some kind of a secure investment. We wouldn't want to have it be in a risky investment just to jack the interest rate. Hey,
there's an insurance company out there looking for some money. So.
We were thinking about AIG.
AIG, right, exactly.
Agricultural insurance. Guaranteed. Do you have anything on this, sir?
Mr. Chair, I just want to make certain that authority is being delegated to the Director of Public Works to execute the agreements in accordance with the board's instruction.
So we should do that in the motion?
Yes, and to inform the auditor controller of the source of the funds as well.
Happy to make that part of the motion.
Okay. So that's part of the motion. You okay? You understand?
Yes, sir.
Good. Well, you are such a smart guy. It's unbelievable. We have a motion and a second. Did you motion that?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming in. We appreciate that. Thank you. We wish you the best on doing that. Okay. Now, we've been waiting all day for Mr. Dursey to come down and talk to us. He has some special news for us.
Well, let me start off.
Okay.
I feel fortunate to be here. I'm sorry I'm delivering such unfortunate news, and unfortunately, I don't think this is going to be the last time that I will be before your board talking about the budget and some unfortunate news. Today, we're going to provide your board with a snapshot of some significant budget issues. They're of concern for this year, next year, and possibly well into the future. When we first put this year's budget together, our biggest unknown was what was the state going to do. That was before the meltdown of the national economy, the tightening of credit, along with the additional problems in the mortgage credit arena, and the meltdown of various large institutions across the United States. So as we look at where we're at today, we have the national crisis, we have a state budget crisis, and we have the implications on our local budget as a result of both of those items. So Mr. Dursey is going to walk us through where we're at today. It's very early. The data that we have is based on just a few months of information. We're projecting it into the future. We anticipate talking our way with you through where we're at today, then meeting with the departments that are most directly affected by this direct revenue loss and looking at what kinds of adjustments would need to be made within their budgets, and then getting back to your board. About the same time, we will be starting to hear from the state, I suspect, about what's going to fly or what's not going to fly in the governor's desire to deal with his budget problem this year. So with that, Mr. Dursey?
Thank you. I think what we're looking at, this morning we had a disaster recovery exercise. I don't think this is a financial disaster. Your 401k may be a financial disaster, but I think what we're looking at here is some financial challenges as we go forward. Very early in the fiscal year still, just a couple months, 3 months worth of data. The economy is obviously still struggling, and we expect it to struggle. We are not the economists. We try to draw on information from a number of different economic forecasts, and the best we saw was next summer was the best. So we're not expecting anything clearly for this year to be recovering, and then we would go into next fiscal year also. Investment markets are still very volatile. We will talk a little bit about our retirement system and its impact. I know one thing is San Mateo County, for example, lost $155 million in their pool due to an investment with Lehman Brothers and Washington Mutual. That came down, as it trickled down, it was $9 million for their general fund. So that's almost as much as we'll be talking about today, just on that one issue, just for the loss of those investments. And those weren't like risky investment that Orange County was doing a number of years ago. Those were very supposedly stable investments that they were investing in. And the state is continuously adjusting their budget. I think they're at $11.2 billion, and we'll get into that information a little bit. Revenue shortfall. This is what we've identified as the revenue shortfall. General purpose revenue, we're still expecting, based on property taxes, which is the majority of our general purpose revenues, that we're going to be in a break-even mode for general purpose revenues. Again, it's still early, but we do have some shortages in supplemental property taxes. We have some extra money coming in from RDA pass-through. So there's kind of an offset. There's pluses and minuses in our general purpose revenue that we think that in general, remember we're talking about $320 million, so a plus or minus $1 million will not be significant relative to that number. So we're looking at general purpose revenues about break even. And most of this information we'll be talking about today will be general fund information. Discussions with other departments depending on the department. For example, fire, again, is primarily property tax based. Roads is revenue based from sales tax, but they have enough money to continue on throughout their process. And a number of other items are property tax based. So most of the discussion here will be on our general fund. Realignment, as you know, back in I think 1991, the state realigned health and welfare funding, and we're expecting that number to be $4.5 million short. We're expecting Prop 172 sales tax, our public safety sales tax, to be $8.5 million short, and then our clerk recorder, basically recording fees, to be about $700,000 short in this year. All of those three items, the general purpose revenues kind of is the general fund's contribution to all the different departments to fund their operations. The bottom three are all considered to be direct revenues for different departments. So in general, our policy is that when revenue goes down, your appropriations need to go down, and that's the general policy. So all of those are direct revenues that will have to be somehow worked through by departments. Elections division, this is appropriations shortfall. The elections division, we expect to have about $500,000 that they're going to be short in appropriations due to the necessity of the recount, plus the additional cost of this last election, which was really quite a bit beyond what they had originally anticipated for election costs. We would expect to help.
You say appropriations shortfall. Don't you mean spending excesses?
That could be, but I think they did. Yeah, there's an odd way. It's a way we look at it.
Say it. Appropriations shortfall.
Because we're going to have to come back to your board for additional appropriations in that department.
They need to increase their budgeted spending amount.
That's correct.
Because their budgeted spending amount is going to exceed
their appropriations.
What their appropriations.
Yeah. If it was somewhat controllable, this is a situation where there's not as much control for the department as otherwise. So we have concluded that we'll probably have to come back to your board for additional appropriations at that time.
And this is all based on this current election?
Yes.
And so the recount, we get no opportunity from the state to stay has the money, but there's no.
It's our understanding that the state will not reimburse us for that, so.
If I might interject there, we are looking at a test claim for that because that was the Secretary of State imposing a mandate on the local government. So it may take a few years, but we're trying.
Okay.
That was from that mandate she issued in October. So that's right, to explore that as a mandate and for reimbursement.
But I thought it was legislative mandate.
It was a Secretary of State mandate, and what we're doing, at least coordinated with Jim Becker to make sure that he captures the costs of the recount so that we can fly a test claim. But regulations should also be included in the mandate reimbursement, not just law change.
Not just legislative.
We'll pursue it. It's being pursued, but
We don't expect to have any impact in the current fiscal year for sure. We're still going to be short. Our breakdown of the realignment, $4.5 million of realignment. Sales tax shortage about $2.6 million, and vehicle license fee shortage of almost $2 million, $1.9 million. According to information we received from CSAC, this is the first time ever that the VLF has actually gone down from year to year. So it's really an unusual year, and the vehicle license fee is a significant funding source for our realignment health and human services programs. The way this breaks down, the $4.5 million, the general funds, about $2.9 million, and we'll get into that, a little breakdown of that. The medical center gets about $1.2 million of realignment revenue from that's from the health trust, and the in-home support services gets about $400,000. These would be their proportional reductions based on what we assign them out of the health and welfare realignment trust accounts. This is not their total amount, but this $4.5 million decrease proportionally would impact those three areas in that amount. The IHSS is really it's an entitlement program, so this is where we have a little bit difficulty, and actually in some of these other areas, specifically HSAs, those dollars are delivered directly to programs that are direct aid and are entitlements, and we don't have as much flexibility over those as some of our other programs. So that's where it will be a little bit more difficult to try to actually get those departments to decrease their expenditures. For example, we allocate $400,000 to in-home support services. That's an entitlement for those people. We won't see the dollars probably going down in those areas because of the fact that they have the entitlement to spend and work the hours that they're entitled to. So
To say it for the general public, when we say it's an entitlement, it means we have to provide the service, whether the revenue from the state's decreased or not.
That's correct.
And so we're going to have to spend the money.
We're going to have to spend the money.
Thank you.
These are the various general fund accounts. If you go back here, we have realignment, and we broke it down to general fund, VCMC, IHSS. Well, the $2.9 million of general fund is broken down into these departments. Mental health is almost $1.5 million. You just go right down the list. A lot of these items, we noticed public defender, district attorney are also getting probation. Public safety areas are getting social service dollars to help run some social service programs that are within the public safety area. The Prop 172 sales tax, we're expecting $8.5 million decrease. As it's written now, our allocation of those dollars based on the proportional share of their 172 allocation, the sheriff's decrease would be about $6.3 million. You can see the DA at $900 and probation another $925, and the public defender about $350,000. We get into some of these areas. Obviously, it's significant impacts for those departments. That's pretty simple to say. But when it comes to some areas, there's a lot less discretion and a lot less ability to cut their appropriations due to these revenue shortfalls. So, but on the other hand, it's proportional. The sheriff may have a $200 million budget, but it's still a good chunk of their direct revenue that they get. This particular slide would be assuming that we change our allocation and include the fire district. Right now, the fire district is based on, their allocation is based on the budget. So what we would do is we would probably recommend that we reallocate their dollars based on what the actual dollars are coming in rather than the budget account, because budgeted amount. So their share of that would end up being $225,000, the fire districts. So we decrease our contribution to the fire district that we had out of our Prop 172 funds. And the $225,000 would be spread among those other 4 departments, decreasing the amount that they would have to be allocated, the shortfall that they would have to be making up. I think.
Could you say that again?
We talked about the agreement about giving $172 to the fire district, and there's a formula for that. And when we last talked about this last year, what we recognized that there was no truing up. It was based on projected revenue. And every year if you do it on projected revenue and you're wrong, you don't get that much revenue. In fact, the fire district would get overfunded. So what Mr. Dursey has proposed is that basically we do a true-up about what the true revenue is that came in under 172 related to that agreement. And that would mean that if you trued that up, fire district, the amount that you normally would be giving fire district this year would be reduced by $225,000, and that then would be the other 4 departments would not have to basically make up that $225,000. So that's what that is.
The impacts of these specific items will be our next slides. Here's in March of 2008, this was our 5-year outlook, just 6-8 months ago. You see that we were expecting 09-10 at the bottom there to be, we expect to be $3.5 million short going into next budget year. That's pretty reasonable. We think that's pretty we can handle that pretty well. That was based on about a 3% or 3.5% property tax growth. In the out years, we expected property tax growth to go back to its more historical at 5.5. So in the out year, 2013-14, we were expecting to be about $5.5 million out, and that's a 5-year forecast based on the information that we had on March of 2008.
And that's really based on not adding any new programs or any new projects or.
That's current services we project out for subsequent year.
With about a 1.1 billion.
That's correct. 1.1 billion in the 2013-14 timeframe, right? This is assuming that we get our spending levels back down to the basis where we can afford to continue on. The spending. This is again assuming that our realignment, our $13 million. We get down to that spending level by the end of this year. And going into next budget year, we've reduced our appropriations by $13 million, roughly speaking. Not exactly 13 because some of it's non-general fund, but the idea is that if we can get our spending level down to a sustainable level by the end of this year, we would expect that going into 09-10, when we come up to the budget for 09-10, we'll still be $7.2 million off, and that's primarily because we've adjusted our assumptions on some revenues in the out years, primarily property tax and some sales tax revenue.
I got to say this a different way to make sure that I'm catching it right in terms of when you're saying getting us down to a sustainable level. Bottom line, you're saying is if we decrease our expenditures by the $13.2 million that you're projecting we're going to have in terms of revenue shortfall between 172 and realignment, if we decrease our spending by that amount, then we'll be on this track, which still is going to be a little bit worse than what your last chart was because we're also reducing our revenue expectations into the future?
That's correct.
Got it. Thanks.
And to just follow up on our next slide, this would be what it would happen if we did nothing currently. In the current fiscal year, if we did not get our spending levels down to where they would need to be, we would have about a $19.7 million deficit rolling into next year.
Let me ask you, on that last chart you had, we're going to end up with $7.2 million. Is that what it was?
That's correct.
And where are we going to make that up?
That's going to have that is going to have to be worked out through the budget process, and that's going to have to come. In general, depending on how much was general purpose revenues and direct revenues, but in general, it's going to have to come from every general fund department that is sharing in general fund
expenditures.
And this whole chart right here is based on current information you know.
Yes,
If something changes, up or down, this changes this chart.
that's correct.
Okay.
So our next chart, the 19.7 and the 7.2, it's about $12.5 million difference. That's in general, the general fund impact of all the $13 million hit, if that makes sense. If we do nothing at this point in time, we continue on at our current spending level, then we would expect, as we project for next budget year, to be $19.7 million out of balance and have to make $19.7 million worth of cuts going on to next year.
Do we have to cut the 13 million out of our spending this year, or cut the 13 million in a way so that when we start for next year, it's cut by 13 million?
We have to get our spending level down by the end of this fiscal year to that level. We don't have to cut right now, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So you're correct. We have to get our spending level down to a sustainable level, which is $13 million currently.
So we have to begin cutting.
That's right.
And ultimately get all the way to this big cut.
That's correct.
Now, the other part of that is we're just talking about a couple of direct funding areas that is showing up now in the projections. We'll be going back to the departments, because the departments may also have other direct revenue that has done something else has occurred. So this is just relating to those big things that we see right now. That may just...
So going forward, retirement funding, some more good news for us. As everybody knows, the markets are extremely volatile. Just want to remind you that last year's 6.7% loss for 07-08, last year end, this last fiscal year end. The retirement system is not done with their actuarial evaluation, so all of these are kind of educated guesses on my part, or on our part, to determine what we think is going to happen over the next couple of years as far as our retirement funding. We would expect, based on that 6.7% loss at 07-08, our contribution for next year, 9-10, will be relatively stable as far as percentage of salaries because of the smoothing effect in the retirement system. Overall, the retirement system before this year end, before 07-08 year end, they had $288 million, what they call positive pipeline assets to help, that they were smoothing through their system. So they had gains in their system, actually, up until this current year. When this 6.7% loss hit, again, compared to their assumed 8% return, we're talking about almost a 15% differential between what they're assuming and what they ended up losing. That number turned that $288 million positive pipeline assets, I'm expecting that, or we're expecting that to come in at about minus $200 million. So there's almost a $500 million swing in their pipeline assets that will be smoothed out over the next several years.
In 1 year?
In 1 year,
wow.
That's correct. So year to date, so the good news is that for 9-10, we would expect the contribution rates to remain relatively stable. The bad news is, so far year to date through October, the retirement system has lost almost 22% in their portfolio. Last time I was here, I think I said between 20 and 30 million. I'm sticking by that number still. I would be leaning toward the higher end of that in 10-11 if the 21.9 comes through. We would be at the higher end of that additional contribution based on those returns. I think our unfunded liability would go from, let's say, 350 million up into close to 600 million.
So you're saying that by the end of June of next year, if that stays true, where 20 or 30 million additional funding is required in the year 2009-10?
No, 10-11.
10-11. Okay, so we still got another...
Right, another
18 months to get that market back up. Okay.
So, and this potential impact, by the way, was not included in that 5-year forecast because it's, from my standpoint, I don't have enough detail on the 09 or actually last year's end and where the actuarial rates are coming in for next year even. And clearly, it's real early in this year to be try to assume that they're going to lose 22%. They could lose more. Things could turn around quickly for whatever reason beyond my knowledge. But we would expect them to have another year that's a loser. So going forward, this potential impact is not in those 5-year forecast numbers. So you would see it in the out years, you would see a significant increase. We could go back a couple and say, even under the best case scenario, assuming we balance our budget now in the out year at $6.3 million, that number, if it's increased by $30 million, so we're out of balance now by $36 million rather than $6. So it's clearly a significant number. If we went back, and actually it would hit in this year, we're already a little bit out of balance. So. State budget is another issue that, we have to say the state, with 3 question marks. I think that's at least how many times they're probably going to go back and redo their budget. So they've identified that they have a revenue problem. I guess I think that the governor has at least made an attempt from his standpoint to try to make an even play with their legislature as far as increasing revenues and additional cuts. So they've $4.7 billion in revenue, including a sales tax increase and a sales tax base expansion. The sales tax increase is, I think, 1.5% for 3 years. The sales tax, there may be a silver lining in this whole scenario, that the sales tax base, if it increases, that will help us, because it'll increase a little bit of Prop 172 sales tax, because you've expanded the base level of what you're applying a sales tax to, and it'll increase a little bit of realignment sales tax also. So I mean, if you want to talk silver linings, that's about as good as I can do for you today. $4.5 billion more in cuts, and we expect more health and human services cuts, and Williamson Acts, which again, they're taking that one completely off the board right now. They took 10% the first round. If it goes away, that's $300,000 additional dollars in ongoing funding that we'd be cutting out of our general purpose revenues. Make sure I covered all my notes.
I think the potential suspension of Prop 1A. Prop 1A is what, of course, protects us. The state is getting into bad enough shape that they may consider that suspension, but it's a short-term fix because it's basically borrowing from local governments, and in fact they can only do it once, and then they've got to fix it. So if they can keep their attention span on solving the problem, maybe they won't go there, but they seem to have demonstrated a fairly short attention span for trying to fix these problems and doing them in very short and not system-wide resolutions. So that's certainly something that they could do. They could take 8% of the prior year's total property tax, which would, of course, be pretty devastating to us as well as the other cities. So that's one of the things that's out there. Nobody has brought it up. I think that to the governor's credit, he and the LAO has analyzed his numbers, and what he's doing at this point in time is talking about real dollars and talking about real revenue generation versus
right.
Just...
and I think to follow up on the 1A issue, if the governor did take 1A dollars or take local property tax dollars, that would be a one-time hit, and that would be one of those situations where we would probably recommend going ahead and using our internal fund balance to fund that and take care of that issue for the year or 3 years or however long it takes. The 1 year that they take it, theoretically, the next year we'd be back up to our same funding level. So that would be a one-time, them taking our funds, and they would have to pay it back. So we would kind of loan ourselves that fund, those monies. So that compared to the other revenue losses, which are ongoing, and therefore we need to adjust our expenditure base down to our ongoing revenue base.
Don't ever give them an inch.
I agree.
I mean, if they take it for 1 year, It's hard to imagine they're going to have their fiscal house in order in such a way that they wouldn't need to take it the next year. But they would have to make the same declaration of emergency and all of that stuff to be able to do that.
They can't do it again until they pay the first one back.
Right.
And they can only do it twice in 10 years. So, so there's some containment.
That doesn't eliminate the fact that they still owe us $20 million from old SB 90 claims from the early 2000s, I guess it would be. So they still do have an IOU out there, but they'll say they didn't put any money in their budget this year for us, in case you were concerned. So. What's next? This is our. Obviously, we're going to be working with departments over the next several months and try to get their input. We won't be able to come up. The departments are the one who are the operators. They're going to know where they can and can't eliminate appropriations, and we're going to have to work with those departments at the minimum to get their spending level, maybe not immediately, but clearly down to a sustainable level by the end of this fiscal year. We will be identifying ongoing reductions. We have identified some one-time reductions in the current fiscal year, but we need to get our spending level down to an ongoing sustainable level.
Departments might also identify revenue-generating areas that would, if there are any left, that in fact could offset some of these expenditures. But we're not closing the door on that as one of the possibilities. So we just have to be sure that it's real ongoing revenue.
Right. And again, we're trying to get a structurally balanced budget is our ultimate goal. And we will be back to your board with our process is we come back first quarter. We generally give you an update. Historically, we've come at this point in time and said nothing's really changed for this budget year. Well, this year's a little bit different. What we have normally done is come back in mid-year with a mid-year board letter doing some minor adjustments. This year we're going to come back mid-year and do some major adjustments. We've already made one budget adjustment, I think a couple weeks ago, for the state impacts, reducing it by about $1 million. The next round of budget adjustments mid-year, we would expect the timing of it as of December 31st, so we give the departments several weeks to make sure that they can do their projections for that year and see where they are. And going forward, we would review that and probably be back to your board sometime in late February, maybe early March, with a mid-year board. That doesn't mean we're not going to be starting on the problem now, which we will be, but actually making the adjustments. We'll have a much better feel once we do our mid-year, we call it mid-year, year-end projection, see where we are fiscally for the rest of the year. We will, in the interim, during this process, we're going to begin developing the 09-10 budget. We got to continue on. Obviously, our assumptions as far as revenue growth are going to come down. It's too early in the year for the assessor to really give us any indication. Right now, we have a 2% growth in there. Whether that's high or low, I don't know. It's a 2% growth factor in there. If it's better than that, that's good. We would expect that's his minimum growth rate for Prop 13 is 2% a year. So that's the number we're going to be using going forward until we get additional information from the assessor. And then I think the last item is diligence on department's behalf and flexibility on your board's behalf, because we'll probably be back multiple times throughout this year.
When do you expect to, how often are you going to come back? It sounds like...
Well, I think we're going to be back
Okay.
in January, definitely. In the meantime, our departments and our staff are going to be working on how they're going to be making these adjustments and what adjustments can be made. So, departments recognize when they have this sort of a revenue shortfall that they have to start somewhere, and I would anticipate, they've been very responsible in the past, I would anticipate that they're not filling positions, they're shifting positions from one category to another category, doing those kinds of things so that we can mitigate any potential layoffs. We're not out of the woods this year in terms of that raising its head.
No.
We think we could get there with the work of the departments, that's still out there.
You don't see a lot of smiles on those faces out there.
No. I don't think you're going to see a lot of smiles.
Well, I don't know if we want to have hope or not that we get some bailout from the federal government. They seem to be able to print money, so they don't have to balance the budget.
Okay, well, we talked about a disaster in the feds and a disaster in the state. I appreciate you trying to keep us out of a disaster here, so thanks for...
We do have challenges ahead, obviously, and so far we thought that we went into the year pretty well balanced. Again, general purpose revenues we expect to be fairly stable in that regard, and even going into next year, we're not going to see significant growth, but we would expect that to be fairly stable, those numbers, and that revenue source, the property tax revenue, clearly is not as volatile as what the state has as far as income tax, personal income taxes and those types of things. I think between personal income tax and state corporate tax and sales tax is probably 75–80% of what the state has for revenue. So as the economy goes, clearly the state revenues will go, and we may see decreases again in the state revenue forecasts.
I think we have to look at that, but I do appreciate how the departments have done a very good job, and how you and the CEO's office have done a good job. We're not like our neighbors to the north who are laying people off like crazy, and I feel for them with that big fire they had. That's going to take a lot of, property off the tax rolls. It's going to be a major effect. So I appreciate the hard work you've all done in this kind of work that will slowly, hopefully, get through it without the major.
Right. So. I think the earlier we start, obviously, the better we can be in 6–8 months from now. We'll be in hopefully better position to, and clearly the numbers will be coming in throughout the year, so we'll have updates for your board as we get more information and the numbers become either, well, as they come in, we will update your board as far as how they're actually coming in to make sure that we stay in line with what we expect to be as far as revenues.
Right. Good.
Don't tell the new supervisor till he's sworn in, okay?
Yeah, that's for sure. Baptism by fire.
Essentially, the 5 public safety departments plus mental health, where we have that designation for mental health, 1.4 for mental health, public health, and HSA. All those departments really have to be paying careful attention to this now.
Absolutely, yeah.
They have revenue drops that are clearly...
Yeah, and they're significant, and it's, in general, like I said, this is the first time the VLF, vehicle license fee portion of the realignment has ever decreased, and the sales tax, is also decreasing, but the VLF is extraordinary in that regard.
Thank you.
I think the other thing we need to look at is this economy does shift. We're probably going to be seeing more of our county citizens having to use some of the services that we provide. So we're going to have to find that balance in our hospital clinic systems, that balancing the idea of hiring more doctors versus, because that hits us in general fund, and it's a very difficult balance. We're going to have to work hard with that group too.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, we don't need to talk about this anymore. Thank you so much for
your attention.
Aren't you wishing we were just doing a disaster model program to end the day?
This was a disaster. Well, thank you. I think that is our meeting for today, and well, all right, so we'll adjourn.